Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest and co-founder, Cammy. Hey, Cammy.
Hey, Bryant.
I don't know if you can hear that Artemis just chirped behind me.
Oh, cool.
She's, really happy with the
She's
sunspot.
excited.
She's very excited because we're talking specifically about her today. That's right, Mythstorie, show about myths and history. We pick any kind of random topic from any myth, legend, history. Today, we've been enjoying keeping it Greek, keeping it ancient, keeping it simple. And I do happen to have a cat named Artemis. And while we're not talking about my feline, although she's like perfect, she's a perfect cat, I'll post pictures of her. We are going to talk about the goddess, the one of the original Olympians, OG people. Maybe not as cool as Hermes. You can listen to that episode to find out why he's so cool. But a very fun and interesting goddess I have found. Um, Cammy has an interesting story, as she always has for our show, and then I will lead a little discussion on her of some fun stuff, facts and trivia, 5 things you need to know about Artemis now. But
Before you meet
anyway,
Bryant's cat.
yeah, you always need to know all about my cat. But Cammy, why don't you set up your story for us?
Okay, awesome. So I used Ovid's Metamorphoses, and the translation was by A.S. Klein. Actaeon, weary from his days of hunting, thought it wise to break from his party and meander through the woods home. And close to the path he took, Diana built her welcoming grove. The valley's dense trees opened to a wooden house with an entrance made of volcanic rock. And there, just outside, was a spring where Diana and her nymphs bathed. And so, on that day, just after the goddess gave her quiver to one of her nymphs, the unsuspecting youth stepped through the threshold into the grove and saw Diana and her followers, bare of chest and glistening in the clear water. And just as he realized what he had come across, the nymphs began to cry out in anger, and Diana herself threw water on the man, not having her arrows near her, her bow unstrung. But her curse shot true, and the man began to grow horns upon his head, and his neck began to grow long, his body now that of a stag. And so he was run out from the place, and not knowing where to go, he headed back to the party of hunters he'd left behind. And as he ran back to find them, his dogs caught scent of a deer and gave chase. Blackfoot and the aptly named Tracker caught his scent first. Then Greedy and Gazelle and Deerslayer close at his heels, Wolf signaled to the hunter that they had prey, and so they called for Actaeon to hurry and help take down the stag. The stag turned his head at his own name, but in that moment was his fatal mistake, for when his attention was lost to the other hunters, Blackhair and Killer and Climber sank into his shoulder, the rest of the pack joining the downed deer, their master now their prey, and Diana finally, at the end of his life, could then begin to ease her anger.
What a nice name to have, Tracker. You know what you got going on.
I love that Ovid went through all the names of the dogs. I mean, he probably
Yeah,
named like 15 dogs. It was really cool.
that's so cool. Yeah, Artemis is badass. Very active, very involved, but like, Cammy, I don't know how to break it to you. The Greeks didn't have high thoughts about women, unfortunately.
Really? Oh no.
In some cases, they weren't even like citizens. They weren't citizens, and or considered like people. And so it's refreshing to see Artemis like don't care about that. She definitely takes things in her own hands, and she happens to be the twin of Apollo or Apollon, who we talked about not too long ago. And exact twin. Their mother, Leto, they I think we talked a little bit about their like birth in Apollo's episode. He's okay. He's all right. Listen to Hermes. That was the one we did right before that. That was the cool
Right.
one.
That should have been her brother.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. So she's the Olympian, an Olympian, one of the I kind of realized like she's one of the OG Olympians, goddess of hunting, the wilderness, wild animals, childbirth, and protecting unwed women and girls. This is from one of my favorite sources, theoi.com, theoi.com, and it's really fun to see. She's tons of stories of her that are always fun. She always likes to transform people into animals for their transgressions. So she likes to hit them hard by like putting them into her domain. She has a lot of these icons: a stag, a heron, a chariot that's drawn by does. Um, she was involved with the Trojan War, which the Trojans, Apollo was praised by the Trojans, so it's not surprising that she wasn't into King Agamemnon, who was trying to sack Troy, and he offended Artemis, and she stilled the waters for the fleet, the Greek fleet coming to Troy, and so Agamemnon he was forced to sacrifice his own daughter Iphigenia, which I think we talked about as well. But she was like, no, like you can't. I protect those like women, so no, you can't do that. So she snatched her away from the altar and replaced her with a doe. So she's yeah, like you can't appease her by sacrificing someone, especially a woman, an unwed woman like Iphigenia. So it's fun to see how she is throughout these stories. It's always her. She has this very like singular personality. Her name is really interesting. So her name is derived from the word Artemis, which kind of means uninjured, healthy, vigorous, and so it kind of makes sense. Wikipedia concurs with that. There's a so ancient Greek writers. I'm going to quote Wikipedia here pretty directly by way of folk etymology. Some scholars have linked the word Artemis to Artemis with an A instead of an E, which means butcher. Or Plato did in Cratylus. He brought it to another Greek word that means safe, unharmed, uninjured, pure. Also, the stainless maiden, I guess, was like a reference. And a scholar tried to explain that the word also has a connection to unmoved, calm, stable, and firm. So it seems like etymologically, I'm getting some like Hermes vibes. We discussed how Hermes' name was kind of like a boundary,
Right.
a word for like a boundary, and he was kind of the god of what is the word, psychopomping, going back and forth between boundaries, and it sort of seems like that's
Yeah, liminal deity.
thank you. And Artemis seems kind of quite literally the goddess of safety, unharmed, pure. She specifically protects virgins.
Well, all
She's
that can mean like virginal as well.
exactly, yeah. So it's the same sort of thing, and so protecting animals, protecting women, protecting those who need kind of protecting. Nature, pureness, untouched by man. That like literally like women untouched by men, and the wilderness moved for civilization. And so I wonder if there is. I mean, she definitely had. There are she's an ancient deity. She's as old as all the others that we've been talking about. So we're getting way into the BCs with her cult, but I wonder how that is. What's cool though, what I didn't realize about her were a couple things. So there's very specific versions of her for Spartans, Ephesians, Arcadians, Taurians, and you can see these same characteristics. There's the same bow and arrow hunting goddess who protects and healing, all these things. Different names, different cults, kind of different attributions. I'm going to quote Theoi here because this is really nice. It is impossible to trace the various relations in which Artemis appears to us to one common source or to one fundamental idea. The very manner in which such a complicated mythos was formed renders the attempt futile. So there's like all these different sort of versions throughout all, because it wasn't like, hey, we're all Greek, 3000 BCE, but there's evident that these elements and features added in various places and times, ancient local mythos, the worship of one divinity is identified with that of another. The legends get mixed, and then so it kind of seems like Artemis, especially because you can imagine god of the hunt, pretty easy to have one locally, and you could have these Greek tribes that maybe don't communicate super often, but as time goes on, they get bigger, they kind of combine. Oh, our goddess of the hunt, your goddess of the hunt, it just kind of becomes connected, just sort of automatically. So I think that
It's
it's really
interesting that it's
cool.
always a woman, though, if it is
Sure.
broken up that way.
Yeah, that yeah, 100%. That's a really good way to see. So, and then maybe that was one of the big features of it was that was how it was. But eventually, as we got to some of the more popular sources, Greek writers of the classical age, like 600 BC and closer to present day, they seem to kind of tie these things up. I always think of it like Greek mythology is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like there's all these different versions of Captain America and all these different interpretations. And like, you have to, when you write it down for an audience in a specific work or a play or a tragedy, you've got to nail these certain features. And so these guys, Herodotus and them, they were like, all right, I'm going to do, this, that. And it's really fun. My last thing, I forgot, in Minoan Crete, which we've talked about Minos and Crete a lot. There's distinct evidence that there was a precursor of Artemis, a goddess of mountains and hunting. That was from Wikipedia, whereas my former stuff was from Theoi. So Wikipedia agrees too that there's clear. They might, maybe wasn't called Artemis. Like I can't remember. I don't believe the Spartans called her Artemis at all. But it was clear that it was her. It was that cult. It was that exact same cult. So it was really fun to see. But the last thing I'll leave with you here is that there are no records of the Greeks referring to Artemis as a moon goddess.
Really?
Yes, yeah, and that's like one of the big things. But I realized
guess we're not howling at the end of the episode.
I know, yeah, and that was it. Yeah, Theoi doesn't even really like mention that, and that's because it's not mentionable. And you can blame the Romans. So the moon goddess was Selene, and who I don't even know. That's 4 episodes away. We're going to talk about Selene, the moon goddess.
Good idea. Let's write that down.
Right. So the Romans, however, identified Artemis with Selene, and also who is the Greek sun goddess? Indisputably, who is the Greek sun goddess? Cammy, pop quiz.
Oh, well, Helios.
No, the Greek Apollo.
Oh, Apollo. Well, no, yeah, okay, so Apollo, but Helios is the sun, I guess.
True, yeah, but who was responsible for like the sun moving back and forth?
Yeah, he carries it through the sky in his chariot. Yeah.
Who's Apollo's twin sister?
Artemis, yeah.
So who'd be moving the moon?
Exactly.
That's what the Romans were like. We're logical. We got.
Right. They were very logical.
We don't need, we have a quarter of your alphabet, your words, Greek. We don't need to make this complicated. So yeah, that's what there isn't evidence of that, but that's kind of the assumption, is that they identified Artemis with Selene, and even though they didn't worship her, and then it's just like, well, of course, since Apollo. And as the Romans began to associate Apollo more with Helios, the god of the sun, it was only natural that the Romans would identify the twin sister. So there you go. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, so Artemis, like Sailor Moon, that's like such a big thing with Artemis and stuff. And like, sorry, it's should be Selene, not Artemis, but
Selene or Moon.
Right. But yeah, very, very fun, extremely ancient reference. With the nature of what her divinity went over, it's easy to see how all these tribes and Greek, areas, as they would form more city-states and come in contact with each other more and more, that it would kind of ball up. But it seems like Artemis has a lot of local different versions that were a little more there were like I said, the Arcadians had their own kind of ways. They were these different cults, and they weren't always called Artemis, but it was basically sort of the same thing. And it was just fun to see how, yeah, you're right, how it was a woman, how it was always kind of attributed with the same sort of things, not just hunting, and it just kind of came that way. So yeah, very fun way to look at her, and I was surprised to see it when I did. So excellent story as always.
Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. Did you want to add anything to your discoveries on Artemis?
I do want to say one thing, and I cannot remember where I read this, but when I was researching Artemis, I was kind of researching, because it says she's like a virginal goddess and stuff. And there are some things of her maybe having like affairs with different mortals.
Sure.
And specifically, it was Callisto?
Maybe. Theoi did mention specifically she has no children specifically. So
right.
She was
so Zeus had an affair with Callisto by coming down as Artemis and showing himself as Artemis to this other woman. So virgin doesn't necessarily mean what we take it to mean today.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting. God. Oh, and Artemis just chirped again.
Oh, okay. So we're right
in honor of the episode ending. Yeah. Hold on here. All right, just for one sake, I'll show off. She just went to her
Oh
home.
my goodness. She's so cute.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. Whoops, for supporting Artemis, for supporting the show. We enjoy hitting these old Greek topics. I mean, they can't ever go wrong. We got a couple more coming up. If you have any suggestions on what we should talk about, mystery with an IE, all one word, at gmail.com, or hit us up on our Facebook group of the same name, or you can reach out at me or Cammy. You can go to mystery.net, hit up all of our links, YouTube. You can watch us. You can listen to us on most podcast services. I think that's it. LinkedIn.
I'm
Did we make a LinkedIn yet?
I don't think we're going to make a LinkedIn. I just
Maybe
looked it
next
up. It
time.
is Callisto. I wanted to double check.
Oh, okay,
that.
coolio. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Fact checking. Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks again for listening and joining us, and we will catch you next time. Oh, Celine. All right, stop Audacity. Stop.